What is up, everyone? It's AP. Special little edition here. I'm going to walk through my process using for PGA using Sabersim. I do got to disclose, so I've talked about this process a couple different times in Discord. Some of you may be a little familiar with it, others maybe not. I'm not going to sit here and say like my process is the best. I think PGA is one of the sports that is a little bit different, to where I don't think projections necessarily work as they do in like a sport like NBA, where we know five guys are on the court. We know, we have an idea of what their minutes are going to be, and we have an idea of what their production is likely to be within a certain range. So with those parameters alone, you're able to create a projection that's much more accurate than one that we have for PGA. So in my opinion, and I do believe others kind of share this as well here at Run Pure Sports, is it's about finding the best golfers, getting the best correlated builds, and dialing down your pool. I think the other side of that argument is, taking on like a variance standpoint, opening up the player pool, and betting on kind of the randomness that golf brings at time. I'm on the other side of the spectrum. It is what it is. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum that you're on. I do think, though, it's important to have a process. So I'm going to take you through my process. Again, it's always a work in process. It's not like dialed in the same each and every time. Like this week is a little bit different. We're at the RBC Canadian Open. The field is getting dustier and dustier by the minute, as we've had, I think, 14 guys now that have withdrawn. So that shakes things up a little bit, because we still have an elite upper tier, and something that we talked about on the show last night, and a premium show coming up that the guys are going to talk about as well. So I have Sabersim up right now. We're going to do the screen share. You'll see the first thing that I always do all my research. I always get an idea of who I want to play, and then I come in here, and the first thing I do is narrow down my player pool. So you'll see a lot of the times up top, I have a lot more cuts, and I'm most likely going to make a couple more cuts. I haven't done it yet. And one of the reasons why is this week, I just think this upper tier is like in a tier of its own. I think these guys are by far the best plays. And I want to see, like, the first thing I wanted to do is see, is there a way to include more of these guys in my player pool and also get overweight on them? And I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, because I do want to make sure I'm overweight on players up in this range if I'm going to be playing them. And so what I do, just going down here really simply, I'm not playing Sebastian Munoz at 9,200. Patrick Reed's obviously out. I'm not playing Justin Rose at 8,800. Sahith, I'm not playing him at 8,700. So like, I just go through here really simply, and I'll talk about the projections in a moment. But the first thing I do is I dial down my player pool. I just make cuts. I'm not yet worried about the number of players. Now, I have a certain player amount that I typically try to get under, but this first cut I do, I'm not really worried about that. I want to see where I land, because then those final cuts, give me an idea of, maybe I like too many guys, and the cuts are going to be more difficult. Some weeks it's different, where I just immediately get down to the number of players that I'm comfortable playing right away. You'll see here, I'm playing and I'm making a ton of cuts in this range right here. I'm probably going to make a few more cuts, the 8,500 range, if I want to be able to get overweight on these upper tier guys. You'll see in the upper 7K range, I'm also making many cuts down here. Some of these guys have already withdrawn, and so not playing them anyway. Also, make sure one thing Sabersim does that's very good is they're going to update that. So make sure you're clicking the refresh button to update projections and to update just the status of everything, to make sure you're up to date with all the withdrawals that we've had. This week, I think, is kind of unique. I've started adding a couple of these lower 7K guys back in to my builds, because how I see it from a build texture standpoint is to get multiple elite guys in there. I'm talking upper 9K, 10K guys. We're going to have to play multiple of these guys down in the low 7K range, and potentially down in the 6K range. Now it's tough, because there's a lot of dusty guys down here, and I'm going to be making a ton of cuts. So you already see here JT Poston, a guy I really like. Grillo, he's a ball striker. Right now I have him in there. Matt Wallace, a guy I added back. David Lipsky. Again, I think I'm at around 45 players. And it's something that I want to dial in, but as it stands right now, this first cut, I'm not as worried about that. So you'll see here making a lot of cuts. This 6K range is really gross. So yeah, let me go back up. Let me talk about what I do with projections. So I started at the start of this show walking through it. Projections with golf, I you know, and others may have a different opinion. I really want to, so I came up with this like either 1 through 10 scale or 1 through 5 scale. It tends to be more random each week, and it depends on, you know, what type of exposure I want. So I'm going with my top guys are going to have a 10, and that's just because I want more of these studs in there. So you're going to see some disparity in here. And so I'm plugging Cam Smith. Absolutely love Cam Smith this week. I'm giving him a 10. Scheffler, I'm giving him a 10. JT, an elite, you know, iron player, good on par threes, giving him a 10. Fitzpatrick, a guy I like, 9.75. So, I mean, there's no, like, for me, like, and this is where I say, like, how I do it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. The end goal is I'm trying to get these guys at the numbers that I want, the exposures that I feel comfortable with, and how I see the event playing out. So if you feel, the more that you feel comfortable with PGA, the golfers, and the event at hand, the better you'll making sure that all of my numbers are pushing in a way to get the guys I want in my builds. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, you know, it is what it is. You'll see as we go down below the 9K range, you know, 7.5, 7.5. I'm going down here, Adam Long, 5.25, 5.5. These are numbers that, like, I play around with. I end up running probably, you know, 8, 9, 10 different runs with this, just kind of dialing in these numbers. And I'll show you kind of what I mean by that. But you'll see here as we go down, my projections going down on them as well. And how I kind of control this too is I'm looking at this value number. Obviously, the higher up we have someone, this value number is in value. And, you know, with that, so as we go down in price, I apologize if I'm lagging just a little bit here. It looks like I'm getting a ton of updated projections on my screen that Saber's running, and then, you know, doing the screen share, that sometimes slows down my connection. But anyways, let me go back through and let me show you kind of this first run and where I ended up. So, like, my first goal here was I wanted to see if it's possible to get overweight on the entire 10K range. So I ran a build earlier, and these were the results that I came up with. Now, the one thing I noticed is it's very difficult to get overweight on the upper tier guys. So what's happening here is it put 43 players in my player pool. And it's giving me a lot of Doug Gim, a value that I like quite a bit. And then here's our studs: Scheffler, Cam Smith, JT, Lowry, Fitzpatrick, all guys I like a lot. 38%. I'm pretty happy with that number. I think it's a decent starting point. Now, as this goes, hold on. Let me refresh this real quick. So I use the min and max exposures quite a bit when I'm doing this. And so I put all the players in my player pool. Hold on, let me get back to the PGA Tour. So I try to give a min and max exposure to all of the guys in my player pool. And now I'm not understanding why my settings have changed here. Give me 1 second. So what I want to do is I want to try to get the entire player pool in there first off before dialing the player pool in. This is why. Okay. You got to change this to 0 or to 0.1, or else all your guys here are not going to. Am I cutting out really bad? Simon? Okay. All right. Well, yeah, it does. Oh, I know what's going on. Okay. Yep. Sorry. It sounds like I'm talking to myself, but I'm talking to Simon behind the scenes. All right. So here we go. Here's the other thing too. Sometimes, you might run in this too when you press refresh on Saber. They have a lot of different options here. Make sure the PGA Tour is check marked, and then sometimes when it auto updates, it will change this preference back. And I'm just going to go ahead and remove that rule. And so that's what was happening for me and why everyone was grayed out. So if you're doing this process, that's kind of one thing that happens there. So I was talking again about min and max. So what I did here with the studs, I was trying to get overweight on all of these guys, 45%, 45%, 45%, 45%. So I ended up with 38%. So really close to that number that I wanted to get into. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take away Rory right now. This is where we and I think I was at 43 players in my player pool that first run, and it wasn't including a few others. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove Rory. I'm also going to remove, let's see, got to take this off as well. I'm also going to remove Sam Burns, coming off a win, kind of tough there. And I'm also going to remove Harold Varner. We'll get him out of there. So we're starting to make some cuts. And then I'm also going to bump Corey Connors up. Let's just see if we can get overweight on all of these guys. We'll leave Hatton where he's at. The other thing, just thinking about this and understanding how roster construction works, is I think I need to eliminate some of these other guys like here, Sahith, Rose. Actually, what's interesting is for some reason it brought these check marks back. So is what it is. We'll just get through it with this screen share here. I'm gonna have to ask Jordan about why it did that at another point in time, but he's not on here right now. So I'm gonna go through here. Hopefully, assuming with a 0. Actually, I know what I did. So if I put this back at 0.1. This should fix it. I believe if we apply that, maybe not. Either way, I don't think it's going to matter because I've given those guys a 0 projection number. So what I was saying is I think I need to make a few other cuts here to get the ownership percentage that I want. I think it's going to be Keith Mitchell, and then honestly, I'm going to try Chris Kirk. I'm a big Chris Kirk fan. I'm not sure if I'm sold on this cut, but I need to make some cuts here. And then the other one too is maybe like one of these guys in this range. CT Pan, I think, withdrew. So we'll just go there and let's go Brendan Todd. I like Brendan Todd, but 8,200 is a lot for him. So we've made some cuts now. Let me just see if there's anyone else that I want to cut. This might really mess up because if it brings some of these other guys in here, it'll be interesting. But let's just run this and let's see what happens. I don't fully understand why it messed all of my settings up, but we'll figure it out. So here's the other thing I do. Enough adjustments. We don't need to factor in ownership here because we really don't care about ownership. We want to get overweight on the guys that we want to get overweight on. I don't have a really like strong take on the sim precision here. I usually run it at just like, I think you can, since we're making so many adjustments, I think you can go 0 if you want, or you can go 3 to 5. So I'm going to leave it at 4. And then this is a week where I want as many studs as I can. So I'm probably not going to be leaving a ton of salary on the table. So I'm just going to take that up to 49,100. This, again, for me is kind of different each and every week. There's no right or wrong solution to it. So let's run this build and let's see what happens. If it brings in those guys that are out, I apologize, but I don't know why my settings were messed up. But basically, like what I've done here is I've started my process, and then now it's all about fine tuning it. So I'm looking at what my first results were. I'm seeing if those ownership projection or numbers that we were getting are satisfying to me. And if they're not, I'm going back through to step 1 and I'm starting that process over. I mean, sure, it's tedious, and you don't have to like make it as tedious as I do. But it usually takes me maybe 45 minutes or so, maybe even less sometimes to fully dive through it once I have all of my research done. So let's see what happened here. And yeah, so it's okay. This is unfortunate because I had all of these guys marked out, and something must have happened to where it's bringing them back in. And like Adam Shank and these Jared Wolf. So it had to be something with the projections. So unfortunately, I'm not going to go back through and it would take away time. But maybe what we can do is come back and revisit this with Jordan next week to kind of understand why my settings all changed and resetted, because that really didn't make a lot of sense. Because when I came in here, what I did, I took all of these guys and I Reed, he's out. So I put him to 0. I had all of that done. And so I'm a little confused on why it all reset here and why some of these guys are coming to my build. So I'm gonna ask the Sabersim guys about that, but at least you should have an idea. I'll go back to one of the first builds I ran earlier today where I was pretty satisfied, and I'll just kind of walk through this process and then we'll get out of here. So like this first run, I was fine with it. And I think with the adjustments that I just talked through, I think what we would have gotten is more Cam Smith. I think he would have been maybe 43%, more Scheffler. The one risky thing, and I don't know if it's going to be Gim for me, it might be someone else. I do have to take some risk with one of those cheap 7K guys. It's just a function of the process this week to get overweight and to get the combinations I want with this upper tier and with keeping my pool in a respectable range. But I think what would have happened by making the cuts to some of these guys like Rory and the others that we're cutting, I think we could have gotten 40%, which was the goal on all of these guys. So I will, after this little preview, I will let all of you know if that happens, because that is kind of my goal. The other thing I like to do is look at what these builds look like. So I want to see, let's just go to Scotty Scheffler. Guy's an absolute stud. And what I want to see is I want to see how many other studs, because I talked about how I want multiple studs this week. I want to see what my exposure is. So I can see by doing this, I can see, man, in my Scotty Scheffler builds, which there's 58 of them, I have JT in over half. I have no problems at all with that. But I can see if I have any of the other studs in there with him as well. So, Connor's kind of a stud this week. Hatton, another one. My only one that I would be a little concerned about not having mixed in here is Fitzpatrick. So that's something, just going through this process, I can kind of make a manual note of those things, and I can go back and, address those just using the min and max exposures, using the projections and the different settings that we've already had. And that's, kind of where I'm at with my process. And I just go through here. I give it a quick look through. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of changes that I need to make. down here, I do typically like to have my smallest number or exposure be 3.5. Looks like my internet's going out just a little bit more. So I apologize about the issues with, I don't know why my settings reset. I'm going to go ask the Saber guys about that. And I think next week what we do is kind of revisit this, but hopefully this is giving you a little bit better of an idea of how I do my process. I know we've been in and out a little bit, and I know that the settings changing back on me kind of mess things up, but I do think that this gives you a better idea of how much more control I'm taking over it to make sure that I'm getting the players in that I want each and every week. Now, if you're not as comfortable with PGA, you don't have to do that. But I think with all of the content that we have out there, the shows and everything, the playbook, everyone in Discord, Tambo, all the guys, with all of that information, you should feel confident with PGA, and you should be able to dial in your exposures. This does not mean you have to agree with me each and every week. It doesn't mean you have to agree with BigT, Tambo, or whatever, but use that information to formulate your own opinions, to come up with your player pool and with a process that you like and that you feel successful. The more you do that, the more you embrace it, the more fun it's going to be and the better success that you will have. So I apologize again if the connection was a little spotty and about the projections and settings resetting kind of messed up what I wanted to fully do here. But I do think I gave you a better idea at how I run things when it comes to PGA. So with that said, we got the premium show coming up here in a little over 30 minutes. And then we got MLB, the rest of the slate. So again, it should be an interesting week at the Canadian Open. I'm really excited to see what the fellas have to say about this field and their strategy this week. So with that, Run Pierre and Simon, get us out of here.